I'm sitting here in my home office, looking at a stack of 3 gold, embossed invitations that I have no intention of ever responding to, and I have to ask you all honestly, am I the villain finally closing the door that my siblings slammed in my face years ago? My brother and 2 sisters decided I wasn't classy enough to stand at their altars when they were getting married, literally banning me from their ceremonies because they were embarrassed by my career and my lifestyle. But now that the tables have turned and I'm the only one with the resources to save our family's legacy, they're acting like those years of exile never happened. Was I wrong to tell them that since I wasn't family enough for their weddings, I'm not family enough for their financial crises? I really need you to tell me if you would have the heart to forgive them, or if you'd do exactly what I did and let them sit in the mess they created. To understand how we got here, you have to understand the dynamic of the Miller family. I'm the youngest of 4. There's my oldest brother, Mark, who always felt like the crown prince, my sister Sarah, who lived for social status, and my other sister, Chloe, who was basically Sarah's shadow. Our parents weren't wealthy, but they were old school, proud. They worked blue-collar jobs to put us through school, but Mark, Sarah, and Chloe all developed these massive champagne tastes on a beer budget. They went to expensive universities on loans they couldn't afford and looked for partners who came from prominent families. I was always the black sheep. While they were studying marketing and interior design, I was the kid who loved getting my hands dirty. I didn't go to a prestigious university. I went to a trade school. I became a master electrician and eventually started my own specialized contracting firm. Back then, they treated me like I was the help. When we had family dinners, they'd talk about galas and corporate promotions while I'd talk about a complex wiring job I'd finished, and they would literally roll their eyes. Sarah once told me to my face that I smelled like low ambition and copper wire. The real rift started 8 years ago when Mark got engaged to a woman from a very wealthy, very judgmental family. I was excited for him, truly. I even offered to help him out with some of the wedding costs because I was already starting to do quite well for myself. But a month before the wedding, Mark sat me down at a coffee shop. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. He told me that his fiancée's family was very particular about the image of the wedding party. He said they wanted a specific aesthetic, and having a blue collar brother as a groomsman just didn't fit the vibe. I thought he was joking. I told him I could buy a tuxedo just as expensive as his, but he shook his head and said it wasn't about the suit. It was about the reputation. He told me I wasn't just out of the wedding party. He didn't want me at the ceremony at all. He said I could come to the after party late in the evening once the important guests had left. I was devastated. I stayed home and cried while my whole family celebrated without me. My parents tried to protest, but Mark convinced them it was for his future career, and they eventually caved. 2 years later, it was Sarah's turn. By this point, my business was growing, but I was still just a contractor to her. She didn't even give me a coffee shop meeting. She sent me a text. It said that since Mark hadn't invited me to his ceremony, it would be awkward if she did, and she wanted her wedding to be a high society event, where she didn't have to explain what I did for a living to her new in-laws. Chloe followed suit a year after that, saying she didn't want to cause drama with the other 2 by breaking the precedent. I was the only sibling excluded from 3 major family milestones because I wasn't refined enough. I stopped going to Christmas. I stopped calling. I poured every ounce of my hurt and anger into my business. I expanded into high-end smart home automation and commercial infrastructure. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. While they were busy maintaining the illusion of wealth, buying luxury cars on credit, and taking vacations they couldn't afford to impress people they didn't like, I was building a real empire. I bought real estate, I invested wisely, and I became, quite frankly, very wealthy. Fast forward to 6 months ago. The perfect lives my siblings built started to crumble. Mark's father-in-law's business went under, and it turns out Mark had been living entirely on his wife's family's dime. He lost his house and his prestigious job. Sarah's husband turned out to be a serial gambler who had drained their savings, and Chloe's husband was laid off in a massive corporate restructuring. Suddenly, the elite trio was facing total bankruptcy. To make matters worse, our childhood home, the house our parents still live in, was tied up in a legal mess because our parents had co-signed on a massive loan for Mark years ago that he defaulted on. The bank was coming for the house. My parents were terrified, heartbroken, and about to be homeless. This is where I found myself in a position I never expected. I received a group text from Mark, Sarah, and Chloe. It wasn't an apology, it was a summons. They wanted to meet at a restaurant, a very expensive one, ironically, to discuss family matters. I showed up wearing my work clothes, boots and all. The look of disdain on Sarah's face was still there, but it was buried under a layer of desperation. They spent an hour beating around the bush before finally dropping the bomb. They needed $200,000 to clear the debt, save the parents' house, and bridge the gap. For their own living expenses, they knew I was successful now. They'd seen my company's trucks all over the city. Mark had the audacity to say, "We're family, and family takes care of each other in times of need." I almost choked on my water. I looked at them and asked, "Oh, so we're family now?" because I remember being told I wasn't family enough to stand in a church for 20 minutes. I remember being told I would embarrass you in front of people who don't even talk to you anymore now that you're broke. Sarah started crying, saying that was in the past, and they were just young and pressured by their in-laws. Chloe tried to play the think of mom and dad card. So, that's the situation I was in. I had the money in my bank account right then to fix everything, but it would mean rewarding the people who treated me like garbage for a decade. I had to make a choice between my dignity and the people who shared my blood. Before I tell you what happened next and how I handled the revenge phase of this nightmare, I want you to pause. Go down to the comments right now and tell me, what would you have done? Would you have written the check to save the parents and the siblings, or would you have walked away? I really want to know if I'm the only one who thinks blood doesn't mean a thing when there's no respect behind it. All right, here is what happened. I looked at Mark, Sarah, and Chloe, and I told them I wouldn't give them a single penny. The silence at the table was deafening. Sarah started screaming that I was heartless, and Mark tried to stand up to intimidate me. I just sat there. I told them, I am not giving you money to pay off your luxury car loans or your credit card debt from vacations you took while I was working in crawl spaces. But I told them I wouldn't let our parents suffer for their mistakes. I had already gone to the bank the day before. I bought the mortgage. I now own my parents' house outright. My parents will live their rent, free for the rest of their lives, and I've set up a trust for their medical care. However, I told my siblings that they are legally barred from the property. Since they love exclusive events so much, I decided to make my parents' home an exclusive event that they aren't invited to. The fallout was nuclear. My siblings are now living in cramped apartments, and they spend their time blasting me on social media, calling me a narcissist and a traitor. They tried to get my parents to turn against me, but for the first time, my dad stood up and told them that I was the only one who actually showed up when it mattered. while they only showed up when they wanted something. My siblings are now banned from the very home they grew up in because they couldn't treat their own brother with basic human decency when they were on top of the world. I'm the one saying no now, and it feels like the weight of 20 years of being the lesser sibling has finally lifted off my shoulders. I don't feel guilty. I feel free. They wanted a life of status and fine things. And now they have the status of being exactly what they are. People who traded their brother for a social standing that disappeared the moment the money ran out. Looking back, the moral of the story is pretty simple. Never look down on the people who are building their lives with their own two hands, because one day they might be the only ones strong enough to hold yours up, or the only ones with the power to let you fall. I chose to protect my parents, but I also chose to protect my peace by cutting out the toxic people who only valued me for my bank account and not my heart. If you think I did the right thing by saving my parents but leaving my siblings to fend for themselves, please like this video. It helps more than you know to feel supported in this. Make sure you subscribe for more stories about people finally getting the justice they deserve. And please, I'm reading every single comment on this one. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess. Did I go too far by banning them from the house, or did they get exactly what they deserved? I'll see you all in the next story.